Saturday morning cartoons were awesome. From the 1960s through the 1990s, we kicked off each weekend in a frenzy of animation that is unmatched today.
But were these shows actually any good? Join us as we dig into the history of your favorite and not so favorite Saturday morning cartoons, look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of each one, and determine if our nostalgia matches the reality when it comes to these tunes.
So stay in your PJs, grab a bowl of cereal, and settle in. I'm John.
And I'm Robert.
And this is ToonTalk.
So John.
Yeah.
What am I doing here? I haven't finished Dungeons and Dragons yet, so what are we talking about?
Well, there's a big holiday coming, and it's more important to some people than others.
Arbor Day?
No, not Arbor Day. That is an important holiday, but no, I'm talking about when the Great Pumpkin comes to visit. I'm talking about Hallows Eve, Halloween.
Excellent. Well, that means we got to do a little special episode on the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so normally we talk about Saturday morning cartoons. We'll review an entire series and then just kind of give our opinions, a background. And
yep.
This is, there's so much beyond Saturday mornings.
Yes.
And especially fun stuff like this. So this is probably a new segment that we can start calling Beyond Saturday Morning.
Beyond Saturday Morning, yeah. There's plenty of content out there and plenty of really cool stuff and some bad stuff that we can look at. But this is something Robert and I wanted to do to have fun with this and do a holiday special.
Right. Something a little different, but still fun and still cartoons. So with the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, this is something that became it was a staple, especially on CBS. Not just this special, but holiday specials in general. So you knew as a kid, you'd see that CBS logo come out with it says special, like I'm spinning it on. Yeah. You knew you were in for something big coming.
Yeah, and that classic, I don't know if it was a drum music or bongos or something. It was a unique sound. If you heard it from your bedroom, you came rushing to the living room because something cool was about to go down.
Yeah. You knew, it was on.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
But so It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown was the third Peanut special to be produced, and it was also animated by Bill Melendez. The first being Charlie Brown Christmas in 1965, the year prior. And then earlier in 66, the Charlie Brown All-Stars, which was obviously not holiday related. It was more just like general Charlie Brown Peanuts special. This one features music composed by jazz pianist Vince Guaraldi, which we'll talk about. Uh-huh. And then he contributed the theme song, Linus and Lucy. Again, something that we'll talk about. So it was also the first Peanut special to use, whose title used the pattern of a short phrase. So say something, Charlie Brown. Like in this case, it's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Or it's the election, Charlie Brown. Or
you're a good man, Charlie Brown.
Exactly.
Yep.
Things like that. So it was... that became the norm for pretty much every Peanut special after. It initially was broadcast on October 27th in 1966 on CBS. The original sponsors were Coca-Cola and Dolly Madison brand of baked snack food. When Dolly Madison, actually, this was the start of a long trend, a long partnership, because they continued to co-sponsor the Peanut specials on CBS for many years.
Right.
Coca-Cola was also the sponsor for the first few Charlie Brown specials, but then they stepped away, and Dolly Madison was she's bringing in the cake.
Right.
Yeah.
Literally and
yes, exactly. CBS re-aired the special every year through 2000, and then at that point, ABC picked up the rights beginning in 2001. It aired annually on ABC during the Halloween season until 2019. And then from 2006 to 19, ABC usually aired it twice, actually. Once in a kind of a truncated format where they just the original special, and then they would do a second time and they would add another special tacked on to the end, which was generally 1972's You're Not Elected, Charlie Brown. You're a sad sack, Charlie Brown.
Right.
But beginning in 2022, Apple TV Plus became the exclusive home of Peanut specials, so not everybody actually had access to it for a year or two.
And there was bedlam.
Yes, there was quite a hue and cry.
Upset people. Yeah.
Yes. It also aired on the Family Channel in Canada starting in 2018. It has been on since, but in 2021, it finally returned to regular airwaves, also broadcast not only on Apple TV Plus, but also on PBS and PBS Kids for one night in late October. So
which is the way it should be.
Yeah, it's a partnership. I mean, they have a partnership with like Sesame Street, with some of
sure.
those like streaming services.
Yeah.
So it's still a tradition. It's still available. And of course, some of that sitting down and watching it is gone now. I mean, your kids and my kids, is like, if it's not on a DVD or it's like just like available streaming, it's like, well, what's the big deal?
What's the point? Yeah. You want me to watch a TV show with commercials?
Why are you putting a disc in something?
Yeah, I know, right?
Just give me your phone. I'll watch it there.
I'll watch it there, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember watching this, of course, as a child. You know, we had 4 channels. I think we got cable in my house when I maybe in junior high. But before that, you know, you would see this coming. It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. They'd start advertising it, and you would see it coming, and you made plans to be at home when that was on, because that was your only chance to see it. And there was this huge buildup. I cannot wait to see the Charlie Brown thing. Now, watching it again, preparing for this recording, it's 25 minutes long. Mm-hmm. That's it. But I remember it being an epic.
It was a glorious 25 minutes.
Yes, it was your whole night. I mean, it was popcorn and everything. It was a special night in our house when the Charlie Brown special was on.
Well, I think part of it is like you have so much buildup. You're like, so go Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, tonight at 7 o'clock, and then at 6:30, and you're sitting there waiting. And like after that, all that buildup, it ends. You're like, all right, I'm ready for bed. I'm exhausted.
I wore myself out.
It was wonderful, and I'm as tired as Linus.
Yes. Where's my blanket?
Where's Lucy to drag me and put me in bed and call it a night?
So the Charlie Brown kids, almost everyone knows who the Charlie Brown kids are. I mean, Charlie Brown is an industry, but all of the actors in this show, there were no adult voice actors in this Charlie Brown, or in any of the Charlie Brown specials, really, because the adult voice was just a trumpet. Yeah. So we had these kids who were between 6 and 9 years old. And I've had 6 and 9-year-old kids, and I couldn't get them to do this. I couldn't get them to get in the car sometimes. When I was researching the voice actors, and the voices are iconic, too. You know, these kids did a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. These kids didn't go on to do anything else in acting, as far as I could find, you know, and I searched a lot and I could not find really anything. Some of these kids just kind of went on with normal lives, and I don't even know what they're doing now. Peter Robbins, a 9-year-old, who was the voice of Charlie Brown. So he was 9 at the recording. So he's one of the older kids. So he got the lead. Christopher Shea was Linus Van Pelt. He was 8 years old. His sister, Lucy Van Pelt, played by Sally Dreyer. Kathy Steinberg played Sally Brown, and I've got a funny story about Kathy Steinberg a little later. Lisa DeFaria played Peppermint Patty, and I happened to find her online. She's now a child psychologist, which is something Charlie Brown could have used. Because now as an adult, I look back at it, like, Charlie Brown was depressed.
Do you think she charges more than 5 cents?
Must, yeah. Okay. The doctor is in, and I think the rates are more than 5 cents. And you mentioned Bill Melendez. He was also the voice of Snoopy. You know, the Snoopy's whiny, cryy, barky voice or whatever. You know, whenever he made a sound, it was Bill Melendez.
Interesting.
Bill Melendez was also the director and the producer of the cartoon. And he met Charles Schulz while working on a Ford commercial. And he became the only artist authorized by Schulz to animate the Peanuts characters. So he had a monopoly on working with these Peanuts characters in animation. Not the comic strip, but in animation.
Well, it makes sense, especially at that time, because then you're going to have a consistent look across the board.
Exactly.
Where now with computer animation, you can kind of get that established look with different artists. But when you've got one person drawing it, then you've got the look that you want, and you stay with it.
Yeah, and you got somebody who you trust to draw your characters, you know, because previously, it was just Charles Schulz drawing these in the strips and the paper. Bill also went on to work for Warner Brothers, worked on some Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig stuff. Also did some work for Disney in Fantasia, which that's another iconic cartoon that we should talk about sometime.
Absolutely.
Too. That's super cool. Yeah, really interesting relationship between Bill Melendez and Charles Schulz. The one other character that I wanted to mention was Schroeder, the piano player, played by Glenn Mendelsohn. And he had a funny role in the cartoon, in the Charlie Brown cartoons, because he didn't really have an effect on anything else that was going on. Just he once in a while he'd show up and play his piano. And Lucy was in love with him. You know, he was the cool kid who played the piano with the blonde hair, you know. And he was also a really good friend of Snoopy's. He was like Snoopy's personal accompanist, you know. So yeah, a real small cast, and they were all children. And these voices are forever iconic.
Absolutely.
People will always know these voices. And this is just something they did while they were we're kids.
Yeah, well, and you would just wonder, since it was kind of a smaller production, if they just kind of like, hey, we heard some local kids, let's just bring them in and test them out. I'm like, okay, yeah, you'll work. And,
we're going to make a cartoon out of this comic strip, and we're going to play it once a year.
But they knocked it out of the park. Really
well, here we are in 2022 talking about it, you know.
Yeah. It was nominated for a 1966 Emmy. It was not overlooked at the time even. It was like, oh, this is really well done.
Yeah.
And one of the notes I had read about it is that they sat down and basically knocked out the script for it over lunch.
Oh, wow.
And part of it is because they had pulled so much from existing comic strips. So like the Great Pumpkin idea had originated in the Daily Peanuts comic strip. First appeared on October 26 in 1959, and then each year he kind of kept, the whole idea would come back, and it was, you know, one year it'd be Sally in the pumpkin patch with Linus, and it was Peppermint Patty and Marcy one year, and Snoopy in the, so it was different characters, but it was always there, and it was like a recurring thing. So it was well established within the Peanuts lore, if you will. Right. They also had just introduced the World War I flying ace the year before in 1965. Yeah. So they had that whole idea, and a funny comment from that was Charles Schultz had mentioned that they wanted to do that. He's like, it's too bad because we can't show Snoopy flying. And Bill Melendez is like, I'm an animator. Right. We can do that.
Have we met?
Yeah. And so obviously and they did, and they turned in a really amazing sequence with it. Basically, the only thing they had to really come up with is like, what are the kids, you know, the trick-or-treating and the party. Yeah. Everything else is kind of already existed there, that they could just kind of make up and fill in the gaps. So
so maybe we should review the plot line
absolutely
of this. If you have not happened to see this, A, I'm disappointed. B, you got to go out and watch it.
Yeah, you should actually stop listening to the podcast. Go watch it. It's on PBS Kids or on Apple Plus.
Yep.
Or go to your local library, find it on DVD. It's there. It's readily available in many places.
Yeah, and you need to watch it.
Yes.
Yeah. So the premise is it's Halloween. The kids are getting excited about trick or treat and parties, and Linus is infatuated with this mystical character, kind of like the Santa Claus of Halloween, and it's the Great Pumpkin. And every year he comes to the pumpkin patch and gives children toys. So he convinces Sally to go with him and stay in the pumpkin patch, waiting for the Great Pumpkin. And Sally's going to miss out on trick-or-treating, but she wants to support Linus, and Linus is writing letters to the Great Pumpkin. We'll go over all this later, but they spend the night in the pumpkin patch. Snoopy has this sidebar where he flies in a Sopwith camel and faces the Red Baron and crawls through the pumpkin patch like he's been shot down.
Yeah, he's been shot down over France.
He's been shot down over France. He spends some time with Schrader, who's playing It's a Long Way to Tipperary and other World War I classic songs. And then the Great Pumpkin shows up, and Linus is so excited he passes out and he misses it. Well, it wasn't the Great Pumpkin after all. You know, spoiler alert, it was Snoopy. Yeah. And he wakes up, he says, did they leave us any toys? Sally says, no, just a used dog. And Snoopy's like, used dog, you know. And meanwhile, the kids are out trick-or-treating and getting candy and other things that we'll talk about. And he misses the party, he misses the trick-or-treating, and he's disappointed at the end. He's like, you wait, I'm going to wait next year and he'll come back, I promise you. So it's a great little story.
Yeah, it's
classic kids and their imagination, and it's really a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's three kind of minor storylines just all kind of converge. They all kind of converge at the end when Snoopy arrives, and then suddenly the kids show up at the pumpkin patch. And
and say, yeah, you missed trick or treat. And no, we saw the Great Pumpkin. He's real. You know? Yeah, so it's great.
It's so well done, and it's just like, it's well balanced. It's not like,
no, it goes back.
Get off your soapbox, dude. Come on, let's move. No, it goes well. It flows really well, and watching it now, it's probably the first time in all the years that I've watched this, it finally kind of clicked in my head that like, Linus is kind of just a little greedy little guy, isn't he? It's like he just
wants toys.
Yeah, I just want toys. I don't need your candy. Yeah. Like, that doesn't last very long. I want stuff I want something a little more substantial. Yeah. Like, I'll get Christmas stuff. We'll deal with that. But like 2 months early, give me more stuff.
Give me more stuff. Yeah. And he's writing letters.
Yes.
Because he wants to butter up the Great Pumpkin, so he gets extra stuff. Yeah. So when they were recording this, Kathy Steinberg, who played Sally, her mom called the producers frantic and says, one of Kathy's teeth is loose. We got to record the rest of her lines before she loses a tooth, and her voice sounds different. So they rush her over there. They finish recording her lines, and just as Steinberg was speaking her last line, the tooth came flying out of her mouth. So it was that close to disaster. When you're working with 7-year-old kids, that's going to happen. It's just something that today's voice actors have to worry about, catching a cold or whatever. Her teeth were falling out because she was a 7-year-old girl. I bet there was so many other things going on with these little kids. It had to be either a complete terrifying, horrible experience, or it had to be really fun.
Yeah, I'm sure it had to have been a blast.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they kept doing them is probably testament to
that. Yeah, and I saw pictures of the kids in the studio, and they're standing around with one microphone. So they were actually working off of each other. Mm-hmm. Now you can do some of that, but mostly you see a voice actor in a studio by themselves, watching the animation and doing the voice of their lines, listening to the other ones. So obviously technology has a lot to do with that. They didn't have that technology in the mid-1960s.
Right. What I would think for amateur voice actors like this, especially young kids, having them together and be able to kind of feed off each other and see how, if there's one kid who's a little bit higher end and like is really good at it, that's going to help the other kids okay, I can do that. I can do this. I can do that. And they can kind of have a little bit more fun and really hone in on the flow of the special.
Yeah. And then look around who's going to be the first one to ask for a snack break. Yeah. I really liked this cartoon. I liked it when I was a kid. I've always liked it, and I enjoyed watching it. I watched it a couple of times getting ready for this. I think it's great. This is the first time we see Lucy's signature move of pulling the football out on Charlie Brown, or who she calls Chuck, causing him to fly through the air and land on it. She promises him over and over and over again, now, you're going to kick it, I promise you. And every time he falls for it, and every time she pulls the football, and it's going to happen, and it's just hilarious.
Especially something like this one where they have that funny little segment. She's like, I have a signed document. And he's like, it is signed. Okay. And I can click it. And she's like, funny thing about this document, it was never notarized.
Right. Yes. Yeah, there were some jokes in there. You had to be an adult to understand. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, there's some really good quotes in there, but I think the thing that really stands out, it's consistent. Again, one of those consistent things across all the Charlie Brown specials. It's why the Christmas one is so well remembered. Yep. And it's that music from Vince Giardi.
Yes.
The jazz pianist.
Yep.
So when you think about Charlie Brown, you actually can hear the music in your head.
Yep.
So he had created the music for a Charlie Brown Christmas. It kind of served like an additional character in ways. So it really set the mood. It was just so effective at pulling you in and getting you ready for every single component of it.
Well, we talked about that in Batman the Animated Series in our episode about Batman, that the music was really its own character.
Yeah.
And contributed a lot to the story. And I feel the same way as you do about Charlie Brown. I mean, it does set the tone going into what's happening next.
Yeah, and it's so good. It's so good. And so Vince Giardi also did the music for the Charlie Brown All-Stars. And Schultz and Melendez, I mean, they're like, yeah, you've got to come back. You've got those first two. It was so good. You got to come back. And so Giardi recorded it for this special, the Great Pumpkin, he recorded it with a sextet. So he did, the first one was just the Vince Giardi trio. So this one he had a sextet with him, and he was adamant he'd bring back the song Linus and Lucy that he had created for the Christmas special. Because he, in his mind, this should be the theme for
Charlie Brown.
And Melendez thought about it, and he's like, they hadn't really planned on putting that in. They kind of had this thing sketched out. And Melendez is like, you know what? It's a good idea. Let me see if I can come up. So they actually, that whole opening sequence. So the special opens with Linus and Lucy walking to a pumpkin patch, finding a pumpkin, Linus rolling the pumpkin all the way back. And it's actually really funny the way he's just kind of pushing it, gets it stuck in the fence. Yep. And then he gets it, as he's rolling it, it's getting out of control. He grabs it and he ends up rolling
rolls over him. And they finally get to the house and the pumpkin has just beat him up. And his sister looks at him like, what's your problem?
And they get inside and she spreads the paper on the ground, slaps the pumpkin down, and then whips out a big carving knife and just digs into it. He's like, oh no, you didn't tell me you were going to kill it.
Doesn't he pass out?
Yes. She's just cuts it open and starts ripping out, the insides of the pumpkin.
He's an 8-year-old with a huge butcher knife.
And he's horrified.
Yes.
He's absolutely horrified. Well, I mean, talk about a kid with a butcher knife, and this is another recurring theme that was in my head is, where are their parents? The Van Pelts have like the worst parents in the world.
They're never there.
The kids are wielding knives in the living room.
The dog is flying his doghouse.
Linus,
he's going to spend the night
Linus spends the night in the pumpkin patch. And then who goes and get him but his own sister? So he's sleeping in the pumpkin patch. She's like shivering. And it's like she comes and gets him and then puts him to bed.
Yeah, so the sister leaves the house in the middle of the night to go get her brother who's sleeping out in the garden.
What are the parents doing? So that whole opening sequence was really created just so they could make sure that they put in the Linus and Lucy song.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, so it was...
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And up until like Linus's comment at the very end, the whole thing is dialogue free, so it just lets the music really underline that whole story and let it go. But yeah, and Vince Giardi would actually compose scores for 15 total Charlie Brown specials. And with this one, he had created, so obviously Linus and Lucy, the other main song that he really created for this one was the Great Pumpkin Waltz, which you hear regularly throughout.
Yeah.
He also put in a lot of
Is that the song that's playing while they're trick-or-treating?
Yes.
Yep.
And then there's the mood music. I don't have any specific names, but the names like that really moody kind of slightly eerie music as Snoopy's crawling through
France
behind enemy lines in France and trying to find his way away from the Red Baron. Then Snoopy finds his way to the Halloween party. As you mentioned, Schroeder starts playing all these World War I songs. Like he starts off with "It's a Long Way to Tipperary," the upbeat,
the march.
Yeah, and then he shifts to "There's a Long, Long Trail." These are all like at the time actually fairly well known, particularly in Great Britain. And so "There's a Long, Long Trail," and it's sad down. And then he brings it back up with "Pack Up Your Troubles in Your Old Kit Bag." Yeah, and then it ends again on a downer with "Roses of Picardy." Yeah, and so these kind of, again, well-known, contemporary World War I songs, and this little kid sitting at the piano just banging them out.
And Snoopy gets it. Yes. The dog knows what's going on. Because when they're playing the march, he's marching and he's all proud, and then he's crying, and then he's lifted his spirits again, and then he's sad because he's almost like the war is over, and now it's post-traumatic stress time. That's my favorite part of the whole cartoon.
I've seen some stuff, man.
I've seen some things, it cracks me up because not only is this kid playing fabulous music on this little toy piano, but the dog understands it and acts appropriately based on the music that's being played. It's my favorite part. It even was when I was a kid before I understand all that. Yeah. It's still my favorite.
The other thing that jumped out at me, of course, as a kid you recognize it right away, is just like the cruelty to Charlie Brown throughout the episode.
They just bully him all the time.
Nonstop.
Yeah. Well, I know that in the comic strips, there were different little plot lines about Halloween in the comic strips, but when they came to the cartoon, like, okay, we got to make a decision here. So in the comic strip, Linus actually has the problem with the scissors and cuts too many holes in his sheet to be a ghost, and Charlie Brown spends the night in the pumpkin patch. But in the cartoon, obviously we know Charlie Brown has too many holes in his ghost costume, and he keeps getting rocks. What kind of cruel parents, neighbor kids are like, you get candy, you get candy, you get candy, screw you, you get a rock. It's like, was he a problem kid? Was he the bully in the neighborhood? I mean, he was the one getting bullied.
Yeah.
And after the first special aired, kids from all over the country sent candy to the studio for Charlie Brown because they felt bad for Charlie Brown. So they got all this candy sent to them. Yeah, they were always cruel to Charlie Brown.
I mean, even everything about that party. So he gets his invitation. He's all excited. It's like, oh yeah, there was 2 lists, Charlie Brown. You were on the one to the not send. Apparently, they got the list screwed up, and you got your invitation. Lucy's just so cruel about it. And she's matter of fact about it. It's like, yeah, whatever. You're not supposed to have it, jerk.
She devastated him because he was super excited that he got invited, and she's like, no, you're wrong. You were on the not to invite list.
And then you get to the party, and they're like, Charlie Brown, we need you. And he's all excited, like, oh, yeah, I can help. And then they say, sit down in that stool, turn and face the wall, and we're going to use the back of your bald head to figure out how we're going to carve our pumpkin.
Yes. That's great. And you just see on the glee on his face, oh my God, I've been invited, I've been asked to do something. And then he's just sad and sullen. He's like,
the animation of that is so good. He's like so thrilled, and then you just like see him just like, oh.
He just gets deflated.
And part of it is like, he's not even sad, he's just more like, he's just over it.
He's like there's a Charlie Brown balloon in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and I imagine that's what the balloon looks like when it deflates after the parade. Just, it's done now.
Yeah, just another day in the life of Charlie Brown.
Right. I served my purpose. Yeah.
It's going in my journal.
Right.
You're all on the list.
You're on the list now. People to hate when I'm an adult. I also loved when, at the beginning, Linus is writing a letter to the Great Pumpkin, and he says, "You must get discouraged because more people believe in Santa Claus than in you. Well, let's face it, Santa Claus has more publicity. But being number 2, perhaps you try harder." And that was a reference to the Avis Rent-A-Car commercials in the 1960s. We try harder. Yeah. So, and also in that scene when Linus walks into the living room after writing the letter, Lucy's in front of the TV reading the TV guide. And Lucy's picture is on the cover of the TV guide. You have to watch it closely, but it's there. It's just kind of funny that some animator probably just put that in there quick.
That seems like the kind of book that Lucy would read.
Right. It's about me. Yes. I'll read it.
All right. Well, we'll keep this.
Yeah.
Well, and actually my favorite line from the letter scene is, and it's actually a philosophy that I carried when I was a salesperson. I lived by it. There are 3 things I've learned never to discuss with people: religion, politics, and the Great Pumpkin.
And here we are talking about the Great Pumpkin.
But that's great because after we're done, we're shifting over to religion.
Yeah. Scenes in the pumpkin patch were great because it was just one-on-one with Linus and Sally, and it was just so fun because Sally's still not a believer, but she's there for him. She's like, what's happening? What's going to go on? And Linus knew the whole backstory of the Great Pumpkin. It apparently is a holiday only he celebrates. But while they're out there,
it's like Scientology.
Yes.
You
did pull religion into this.
All right, I'm lining up politics next.
Yeah.
It's just something that he came up with.
We did talk about politics, so you're not elected, Charlie Brown.
All right,
so good. Now we've hit all 3. We've hit politics, religion, and the Great Pumpkin.
Well, I'm done with sales then.
Yeah, the scene where... the fantasy scene of Snoopy becoming a World War I pilot in the Sopwith Camel. Mm-hmm. The Sopwith Camel was a World War I British biplane that came online in 1917, and the Western Front helped win World War I. And he's dogfighting the Red Baron. The Red Baron is a German ace, and this is... the 60s, you're still fresh from World War II, and Vietnam is happening, and they put in this World War I romanticized version of war in this kid's cartoon about Halloween, which I think was kind of funny, but he gets shot down behind enemy lines, and he's making his way to safety so he doesn't get captured and become a POW, and he sees road signs that are pointing to real places in France, which was kind of cool. And then he winds up crawling into the pumpkin patch and pops up, and Linus thinks he's the Great Pumpkin. So that's where those 2 storylines come together. It just cracks me up because I think Snoopy's the only one with a good head on his shoulders in this whole cast, and he just pops up like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be here," and Linus passes out. It's just... Oh, God, I love it.
Well, and it's Linus and Sally have my favorite lines throughout the entire special. Before Sally actually even... She's expecting that... She's like, there's going to be tricks or treats. And...
which I never said tricks or treats.
No, it was always trick or treat. But yeah, for her, it was tricks or treats. When they're talking about it, she's like, "Are you sure that's okay?" And like, "Is it okay?" Like, yeah, it's the thing. She's like, "Okay." And she says, "I wouldn't want to be accused of taking part in a rumble." 6-year-old girl is just like
worried that Linus was going out there to rumble with some people.
And then once they're in the pumpkin patch, she keeps kind of questioning about it. He's like, "You don't believe the story of the Great Pumpkin? I thought little girls always believed everything that was told to them. I thought little girls were innocent and trusting." Yeah. And her response is, "Welcome to the 20th century."
Yeah, she's wise beyond her years. Yes. I really believe she was just out there to make sure he didn't get hurt. She's like, "This poor dummard, will let him believe what he wants to believe, but I gotta go with him just to make sure he doesn't get in any kind of trouble."
But then she's not happy at the end, obviously.
No, she's disappointed. She lets him have it.
Yeah.
She reads him the riot act.
Yeah. My last favorite line that I had written down here was Linus standing in the pumpkin patch and he's saying, I don't see how a pumpkin patch could be more sincere than this one. You can look around and there's not a sign of hypocrisy. Nothing but sincerity as far as the eye can see.
And so that has to be the pumpkin patch the Great Pumpkin's going to visit.
Yeah,
because he doesn't visit all the children.
No, and of
all the pumpkin patches.
And of every pumpkin patch I've ever been into, they are full of hypocrisy. So.
I've never seen a non-hypocrite. Oh, man.
There's pumpkin hypocrites everywhere.
Yeah, there's hypocrites everywhere around pumpkin patches. This is always a treat to me, and because I only watch it when it's Halloween time, and you just stumble upon it. It finds you. You know, it finds me. Like, oh, it's on. Well, we're gonna watch it. You know, you'll see a commercial during the news or something. You're like, oh yeah, we're gonna tune in back at 7:00 after Wheel of Fortune or whatever is on before. We're watching Charlie Brown. Yeah,
yeah. It really it was a mood setter for Halloween, especially as a kid. Like, all right, it's Halloween. It's right around the corner now. Yeah. It's like I better have my costume ready.
Right.
I've got to get limbered up for some from candy hauling. And,
sure.
And
what's my costume going to be this year?
Yeah, exactly. It's What's my plan around the neighborhood? And,
yeah. So my son, when he was a toddler, had a big bald head. You know, because he had very fine blonde hair, and he was a short, stocky kid with this big head. And I begged my wife, please, can we dress him as Charlie Brown? And she said the same thing. We said, no, Charlie Brown gets bullied all the time, and all he gets is a bunch of rocks. So we never got to dress him up like Charlie Brown, but I so desperately wanted him to be Charlie Brown. He was Snoopy instead. He was a puppy or something that year. But
I could see you like get in the costume and like, all right, you look good, son. Here's your first rock.
Right. I would totally have done that. Here you go, clunk. This to me, you know, Christmas has got a billion movies and songs and traditions and social tropes about Christmas. Everyone knows what to do on St. Patrick's Day. Everyone knows what to do for Thanksgiving. But Halloween, to me, has this and trick-or-treating. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Mm-hmm. You know, so this special carries that holiday for me. You know, they'll throw Wizard of Oz on TV sometime around Halloween. But this is, when I think of Halloween, this is what I think about.
Yeah, and one of the things, one last element about this I want to talk about in terms of the art is the backgrounds. Yeah. Because there's one of the things that I still love about it is that, talk about putting you in the mood for fall and Halloween, is that the skies, I mean, you think of fall, I mean, you get that harder glow in the late afternoon, sunlight. And then you get like the beautiful colors, like the oranges and the purples in the sky at night at sunset, and it all comes through in those backgrounds, and it has everything about it just feels like Halloween. Yeah. It's just so well done.
And they draw the leaves falling in the background, which is super cool. And there's one scene where Charlie Brown's raking up the leaves and Snoopy is blowing one leaf over to the pile. And then Linus comes charging in and he's going to jump into the pile of leaves. And he's got a sucker in his mouth. He comes out and his mouth and the sucker are full of leaves. And he says, never jump into a pile of leaves with a wet sucker. So many memorable moments.
It even ends on that classic scene from the comic strip where Charlie Brown and Linus are just leaning on the brick wall and just having a conversation, and Charlie Brown's trying to be sympathetic. He's like, hey, I've done stupid things too, and Linus just loses it on him. He's like, what do you mean stupid?
Right. Well, and Charlie Brown was empathizing with him. Like, dude, I know what it's like.
And Charlie Brown can't win.
No, can't win. And now Linus can't win. And maybe he's like, I found somebody. I found my people. And he goes, no, that ain't me, man.
Yeah, don't bring me into your downer of life, man.
Right, yeah. I'm different than you, and I are different.
And next year, I'm gonna finagle some gifts out of somebody.
Right.
Somebody's bringing me toys at Halloween.
Not your stupid dog. Well, we need to do more of these special episodes because this is a lot of fun, and I don't even think we need to rank this cartoon. I mean,
no.
To me, this and the Christmas special is what anchors all things Peanuts.
Yeah. Yeah. 10 jack-o'-lanterns.
10 jack-o'-lanterns. All sincere pumpkins.
Yes.
10 sincere pumpkins. Yeah. Well, this was fun. This was a little Halloween special for us. And
be on the lookout for more of these Beyond Saturday Morning specials here and there. Christmas is coming up, but it doesn't have to be a holiday special. There'll be other things as well.
Could be other things. If you've got suggestions, let us know.
Absolutely.
We'll take a look.
Well, I hear, Mom, I think it's time for us to go outside. So that means cartoon time is over. I'm John.
I'm Robert.
And this is ToonTalk.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you want more ToonTalk, you can find us on Twitter at ToonTalk Guys.
Or if you've got questions, comments, or suggestions, you can email us at toontalkguys@gmail.com.